Today on the Abundance Universe podcast, I have an awesome friend, an awesome entrepreneur, an awesome leader, an awesome man of the world, man of the universe, man of many talents, many accomplishments. I introduce you all, Abundance Universe community, to Alyosha. Alyosha.
Thank you. Thank
Welcome
you.
to the Abundance Universe podcast. How art thou?
I'm very well. Grateful to be here.
Yeah, that's the energy. That's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're talking about.
That's it.
Gratitude abundantly.
Abundantly
Thank you.
grateful.
Yeah, abundantly grateful. Thank you so much for sharing that abundance. That's the energy. That's what we love to see and hear here. Okay.
Absolutely.
So, Alyosha, this is our first time actually having a in-depth conversation. We were talking a little bit before the podcast, but I was explaining that I think this is one of the most interesting ways to get to know a person is by having a podcast talk and just recording the conversation and having a free-flowing conversation about abundance. I love it. And that's why I started the podcast. You were introduced to me by a friend and or mutual friend and recent guest on the podcast, Sam Borghese. He is a super connector, also superhuman. But he connected us and insisted that we get on the podcast and have a convo because he felt that we were very aligned in a lot of ways. And I already feel that just talking to you for, first 10, 15 minutes ago. So
Absolutely.
I would
Yes, Sam,
love,
great. I love that term, super connector. He is definitely put a lot of people in touch with one another. It's led to a lot of cool things. So shout out to Sam. He's watching.
always connecting. Shout out to Sam. I know he's going to be listening and watching. So, Alyosha, I would love for you to just introduce yourself, talk about where you came from, where'd you grow up, how'd you grow up, how did you get to where you are today, and let the people know about what you do as an entrepreneur,
Mm-hmm.
and also all the other aspects of your life that you feel are important, because this is Abundance Universe. So
Yeah.
please
Yeah.
share everything.
Wow. So that's a lot of information. But yeah, first I just want to say thank you for having me on. Super excited to chat today. Yeah, just to kind of note on just like the topic of abundance, I think it's great. I think it's something that is a muscle in my experience, just learning to really kind of, have that be a focal point of how I, move throughout the world and think about things as it pertains to business or my personal life, dating, whatever it might be. But yeah, so I guess to give you some background, I am 27 years old. I am originally from Seattle, Washington. Grew up, born and raised for the first 20 years of my life out there. And yeah, I mean, you know, I think that my interests as a kid were I was always pretty curious. I wanted to know how things worked. First and foremost, I was always asking like, you know, how does the water come out of the faucet? Or what happens like, I would think things like what happens when you flush the toilet, or how does the light turn on? And I would like ask my parents all these questions. Um, like I would be like, hey, how do the lights work as a kid? And they would be like, oh, well, the electricity comes in. And I was like, well, where does the electricity come from? And they're like, well, it comes from the electricity plant or whatever. I'm like, well, how do they create it? And I would be like, I would want to know like the intricate details of like every single aspect of my life. I just was like really curious,
That's awesome.
as a kid, I just like wanted to know the answers to stuff. I think my childlike curiosity kind of transformed over time. I after, driving my parents crazy for a number of years, as I became older, I became more interested in like kind of like philosophy and like the deeper meaning of life and, why are we here? What is existence? Why do I exist at all? Like just, I definitely had a period of, you know, I don't know. I don't know how I would describe it, but just, I went through the full range of, philosophical understanding of the world. And I was, raised Christian, kind of had a belief in God that was structured around the church. And then eventually kind of like just naturally separated from that as I became more curious. And I remember thinking like, how did the world flood in a week? And I remember watching these videos. I'll tell you the moment, it kind of flipped for me as I was watching this. I was on YouTube and I was watching this video on why creationism is like a fallacy, basically. I forget I'm paraphrasing. I don't know what the title was, but it was this series of videos by this guy explaining how like the creationism and everyone that believes this stuff is like false. But I considered myself Christian at the time, and I didn't know that creationism and Christianity were like the same thing. So I remember showing this stuff to my dad, thinking we were gonna like basically make fun of people that believed in this bizarre religion together. And he was like, he had that connection and was like, no, this is nonsense. Like God is definitely real. And I realized at that moment, I had like convinced myself through this like series of videos that I maybe didn't believe in like these stories once I was kind of presented with new evidence. And that was kind of the moment that I started to have my own experience philosophically. And yeah, so then I went through a period of agnosticism and atheism and just trying to figure out. I went through some, trials and tribulations. When I was younger, I actually, dropped out of high school. When I was 15 years old, got addicted to drugs. And I started to question life. There was definitely a period of many years where I thought, God is not real, because if God was real, then like it's either like God doesn't exist or God is this evil like being that is just like watching people suffer. Because how could some like all powerful force, exist if my life is this bad? Because it was pretty rough for a while when I was younger. And I think that looking back, my belief in God, or my understanding of God, was that like, God is just giving people these things, and like you either are like, receiving these gifts or you're not. And I think that now like my understanding of spirituality and God is more so like, you get out what you put into it, And I think that at that time I was waiting around for things to happen to me. I was waiting around for God to come save me, or like, I remember there was a point where I was really hoping like aliens were real, just because I was like, dude, if the aliens land in like, New York or they land on the White House lawn and we like get all access to all this technology, then I won't have to like solve all my problems. It will like relieve me of the responsibility of having to actually deal with any of the issues that were going on in my life. Um, Yeah, and I think that you can use spirituality as like an anchor for your for like being a victim, basically, and just say like, well, I can utilize this philosophy to like justify my inactions, or just say that like, as long as I have some like moral high ground that I can point to when anything comes up in my life, I can at least hold on to that, as opposed to taking responsibility for like your life and your situation. And that's ultimately what happened with me. Is I hit a point where, that curiosity that I had as a kid, eventually kind of translated itself into like, how do I apply this, like, want to understand the world and like understand how I can impact it personally, to like basically entrepreneurship. I've always been interested in business since I was like a kid, because I just looked at the playing field and I thought, okay, who are the people with like the best lives? And being raised in America, like I would see all these people with like nice cars and huge houses. And I was raised like very like, lower middle class, like not a ton of money. My mom was actually the breadwinner. My dad didn't work. He was like a painter. He worked a little bit. He worked as like a college professor, and he taught art, but his primary focus was never money. And he was always more focused on his art. And my mom was a nurse and kind of more so the breadwinner. And I always, just wondered, why wouldn't you devote yourself to making as much money as possible? And at the time, like that was the only frame of mind that I could really kind of muster. I thought, money was going to be the answer to, again, all of my problems. If I could just make enough money, then like all of the issues in my life would just like magically evaporate. Which, again, kind of as time went on, I realized that's not necessarily the case. But yeah, I always just thought, like, why not devote yourself to making as much money as possible? If you can, solve that one problem of being able to like exponentially increase your income, I found that it was probably going to be the best way to live a really fruitful life. And in the spirit of abundance, I thought that if I could just have this like amazing life and have this great mansion and all these cars and like a beautiful wife and kids, like that would be like happiness. Like I would then be happy if I just had these things. If I just got to this point, this arbitrary point of like a certain amount of financial and material success, then I would be happy, and so I always was kind of interested in that stuff. And as I, just to kind of tie it back into like this whole like spiritual component, I think that, there's nothing wrong with like having intentions to like further yourself in life. I think that's actually the point. I think that we're all here to like perpetuate our version of reality and to kind of become the best version of ourselves. My personal philosophy is like, I wake up every day and I do everything I can to try and just do that day to the best of my ability. Because when I was, going through my struggles with addiction and drugs, I spent many days and years letting the days kind of slip away from me. And I remember being filled with like deep regret that I hadn't capitalized on like a lot of opportunities that were presented to me as a kid, and dropping out of high school and just kind of missing out on like the social aspect. Like I was so concerned on, just like the waste of time in the education system and wanting to really focus on business, while ironically, like simultaneously, like diving heavily into like, drugs and alcohol as like a coping mechanism. But even outside of that, just like business opportunities, like fumbling, like interviews and not being able to pass a drug test and, really just like, blowing my life up and just like, because I wasn't like living a good life. I just didn't have like a solid foundation. I wasn't principled in the way that I was thinking, in the way that I was behaving, or like how my day was structured. And I was just completely incapable of capitalizing. And I know like what that feels like to do that for a long enough period of time and like, come out the other end and just, feel a deep sense of not being fulfilled and feeling regretful. And I never want to feel like that again. So I do everything I can now to take responsibility for like my current situation. That, the day finally came when I got sober, and that was kind of a pivotal moment for me, and just like accepting responsibility that like maybe the actions that I'm taking are like causing me to end up in these situations. And I kind of, turned a corner. I moved out to Los Angeles and just with like a fresh perspective, basically having my ego shattered, started to like dive into spirituality and, like removing the drugs and alcohol was kind of, eye-opening for me. And I started to like get a handle on like what behaviors and what thought processes were actually beneficial to my life. And I kind of reconnected with my, intention to pursue entrepreneurship. And it's been a cool journey, dude. I think that, I mean, I didn't know what I was doing when I was 20 years old is when I got sober. I've been sober for, a little over 7 years now. And it's been like definitely the most, impactful event of my life was like deciding to get sober and quit drugs and alcohol and really focus, every day on just becoming the best version of myself. Because with that, like regret came like this huge motivation, like this elastic rubber band effect of like wanting to go as far on the other end of the spectrum as possible and live every day, to the fullest extent possible, essentially. And, I don't know. I have not done that successfully 100% of the time, but I think that, if I were to die, if I were to get hit by a bus later today and die, I would, I would say that my life was well spent. I think I've had a good run, and I've had a bunch of stuff that I'll kind of get into hopefully, but, Yeah, so that's kind of like the beginning. I would say that like the first half of my journey so far, like previous to moving out to LA and getting sober, like from 20 prior to that, was just like a lot of life lessons that I was kind of taught in a really harsh way. And sorry if I'm rambling too much. I don't know if you want this to
Oh,
be
this
more
is this
conversational.
is awesome. No, no,
Yeah,
I want you to share. I want people to get to know you.
yeah,
You're
perfect.
awesome.
Okay,
So that brings us to where you are now. Congratulations on being sober and moving through life with a clear mind and just a natural approach. I think that's awesome and admirable and respectable. Also, what's your take on spirituality now? Where you are on your journey today? You
yeah,
mentioned where you started, kind of
hmm
how you grew up, different phases and things that may have caused those phases, influences, things like that. But looking at where you are now today in 2023, what is your approach to spirituality and the idea and understanding of the universe and belief in God and just your whole approach? Because
yeah,
also, I want people to be very clear. There's a difference between spirituality and religion.
yes,
And I grew up in the church as well. There's many things that are done religiously that I don't believe in that have nothing to do with my spiritual relationship and connection to God. So I want people to just understand the difference between both of those. But would love to hear your just kind of current state on and ideas on spirituality and where you are and what you hope to share and enlighten people with as well on this at this point in your journey.
yeah. That's a really good question. So I want to state that I'm not religious. But I do consider myself spiritual, although like it sort of pains me on some level to say that living in LA, because I feel like that's just such a like overly used term. And I'll be very specific about what that means to me personally. But I want to state that I have no resentment in connection with religion. And I think that it helps a lot of people. And it's overall, I think, a net positive for the world. I personally don't subscribe to any religious text or belief system, but I don't there was a point in my life where I was resentful at like being raised in a religious manner, but I no longer feel that way. But to answer your question specifically, when I was getting sober, I wasn't interested in spirituality. I wasn't like I didn't move out to California to get sober and like find God. I just wanted to live a better life and remove myself from like all of the negative energy that I was like associating with and substances that I was doing. But what I found was, I basically got a mentor that, he recommended, a spiritual solution essentially to like the problems that I was facing. And he was like, look, and I'll always, credit this process for being transformative in my view of this topic in life, where he was like, look, I don't expect you to believe any of this. I don't expect you to like believe in God or, create your own version of God or I don't expect any of this stuff to like just inherently just be something that you start believing in one day. But he was like, I recommend you take these actions and then have your own experience based on these actions. And that I could get behind. So I started taking these actions. I started like, incorporating some prayer and meditation into my like daily routine. I started to kind of focus on trying to get out of myself through like acts of service through other people. And just I took a bunch of actions through what was recommended for me to do at the time. And as a result of doing those over a consistent period of time, I was open-minded enough to like start to have an experience where you know I was highly skeptical that any of this stuff was going to work. I was like, I don't know about praying, and all this whole, I just was like, kind of like something I was very hesitant and skeptical going into. But I found that like, as a result of taking these actions, my life was transformed in a way that I couldn't attribute to anything other than something outside of myself, some like higher power, some type of like interaction that I was having with the universe. And again, I think it comes back to like, a lot of the experiences that I've had in life have been based on my own actions, and whether that's like negative places that I've ended up in, negative thought patterns from like, repeatedly like thinking down on myself or, like, sorry, my Mac battery is low. It threw me off here. I might have to plug in my computer actually. Yeah. So as I was saying, the experience I had was based on recommendations to kind of be open to these spiritual concepts. And as a result, I started to experience what I would, you know, I just had life events happen to me that I couldn't account for other than to just say that there's something that impacted my life in a profound way that was outside of myself. And yeah, I've just kind of taken that and ran with it. And I've developed a relationship with what I call God over time. And I don't have like a definition for you. I couldn't, there's not like a specific, thing I can point to or something that I could even like give to you to help you understand. I don't even understand what exactly I'm referring to. I just, based on my own experiences, have had like a really cool, uh, connection with whatever it is, spirit of the universe, like whatever you want to call it. I think there's something out there. And I actually have a philosophy that like every major religion and like belief system is just like a set of tools to help you tap into like the same thing, whether it's like, Christianity or Islam or whatever your flavor is, even Buddhism. I think that you're using like a bunch of core concepts of like being a good person and like being intentional about trying to perpetuate like success for others in life and having that, in a karmic sense, come back around to impact you. And yeah, I think that we're all tapping into the same thing, really. And I couldn't tell you what it is. And I don't think there's really like a, if there is a such thing as God, I don't think that we're capable of like truly understanding it. But I can understand how it relates to me and how it impacts my life, and that's what I'd recommend to anyone that's like curious, is to just go and try and have your own experience, be open-minded, and see what that brings you. And so to kind of talk on like the abundance portion of it, when I moved out here, I had dropped out of high school. I hadn't really had any success in business. I had never made any money. I really had no success in any area of my life, if I'm being honest. And I was, just like hopeful to do well, and ended up getting a job. I had like gotten an interview at this like finance company that was like doing really high interest, like commercial loans. And I remember going to this interview, and I just basically was like, look, guys, I was like, I don't have a college degree. I don't even have like a high school diploma. I've made some mistakes in my life, but I will work harder than anybody that you put me next to, if you give me this opportunity. It's just some super old fashioned, like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality of just like, look, just give me a shot. I promise I'll crush it. And I think that that's really what it takes. If you are in a position where maybe like you don't feel as qualified or you have like imposter syndrome, I think that people respond really well to like a genuine intention to like go above and beyond. And that's just what I told them. I was like, look, I want to crush this for you. I ended up getting the job, worked there for like a number of years. And when I started working, this is my first like corporate experience. I didn't know what a PDF was. I had no concept of technology really. I mean, I was like interested in like music and stuff like that at the time. Like I was a very undisciplined person, but I had a lot of intentions to like, make money. I was really motivated, and I was still under the delusion that like, if I could just make 10 grand a month, all my problems would go away. You know what I mean? Just give me 10 grand a month, dude. And I promise you, I'll be good. I'll have everything I've ever needed just with the 10 grand a month. There's a song by Mac Miller called like 100 Grandkids. And he talks about like, I just need 100 grand and I'll be good. It's
What
really
what what happens at 10 grand a month?
10 grand a month is where it's the arbitrary number where you transcend any problem in your life, because you no longer have to worry about like the stresses of paying your rent, and you can get a nice car and you can buy the clothes that you want. You can like, like move the way you want to. You can take a vacation. You can like say yes if people want to go out and do stuff. Like, dude, when I moved out here, I was like really, really broke. And I remember like, people would be like, oh, we're going to go to the movies. And it's like, dude, I can't go spend $40 at the movies. And like I will say like when you're really, really broke, like it does suck. And I think that there's a point that like where you can start doing like normal activities and like going out to eat with your friends or whatever, where like your life gets substantially better. And there's like studies on this where like, I think it's like 70 grand, like up to 70 grand, your life will like dramatically improve. But then it's like quickly diminishing returns for happiness after that point, because the difference between like a brand new Toyota and a G-Wagon is like nominal after 3 months. It's just a car. You know what I mean? Like it's just a car. You have the same, generally speaking, you have the same experience. And that's kind of been something that I've found to be true. But yeah, dude, I remember yeah, dude, I just want to talk about being broke for a second, because I was talking about this with my friend last night, and I think that, yeah, being broke sucks, dude. I won't even lie to you that there is like and that was like a super big motivator for me, is I just wanted to not be broke. I'll tell you this story. When I moved out here, I met this girl, and her name was Jay, I think. And I wanted to like take her out to eat. And I had just discovered, we were talking about sushi before the podcast, but I had just discovered sugarfish. Okay. And it's like this thing where if you don't know what sugarfish is, that like you go there and you can get like the trust me, and they like course out. Cause I didn't know how to order sushi. I didn't know what like yellowtail or, like I didn't know what a hand roll was. I was just like, dude, this stuff tastes good, but I don't know how to like order different fish and stuff. So
Yeah, that's
but
good
I like
sushi.
to, what's that?
Sugarfish is a good sushi experience.
It's a good
Recommend if
shoot. Yeah.
anybody's
And
in LA.
yeah, it's based in LA, and they like course you out like the little nigiri. And like, I didn't really know how to use chopsticks super well, but like I could kind of do it. And anyways, like I was like, okay, I'm going to take this girl to Sugarfish. It'll be perfect. So I just get the two. And I had like enough money in my bank account for like 2 trust me's, no drinks, no, like, you know what I'm saying? I like remember asking this girl out, and I got her number, and she said she was down. And then I texted her like following up, and like we never ended up like going out. She like canceled on me. She bailed. But I remember just thinking like, damn, bro, like I'm about to blow. I don't care if I don't eat for the next like 5 days. Like I just want to take this girl out. And like that shit sucks, man. Like I will say, like money getting you out of that situation to where like you can kind of openly be like, hey, we should just go do this, or we should, it's like truly transformative. So if you're super broke, like I do want to like say that, understand that, and like getting out of that like financial hardship point is definitely like gonna change your life. But the 10 grand a month, dude, I thought at that point that basically like my confidence would go through the roof, and I would have like the ability, I would like get the car and the apartment and the clothes and whatever, and like then like chicks would just look at me different, and I would just have like this swag that like I didn't have before. I thought it would just like kind of change who I was as a person. And I heard I don't know if you know who Charlemagne is. He does like the Breakfast Club, but he basically has this quote, like money basically doesn't change you, it just amplifies what you already are. And I found that to be the case, where like, if we're not talking about like getting out of extreme poverty, but we're talking about like more and more money, it just kind of amplifies like what you already are. And I think this is evidenced by like, look at the types of people that get money and like what happens to their life. Like you don't see software engineers like that make these like 500K salaries. Like they're still software engineers. They still like, coding, and this is very generalized like statements here. I'm not like coming at software engineers. I work in technology. Like I have a software company, but I there's just certain like common themes where it's like, you don't like change as a person. You don't automatically become like super attractive, or like, your personal life doesn't completely transform itself. You still have to deal with like your mental health. You still have to deal with like your fitness. Like a lot of these things that you think, well, it's like, oh, once you get the Equinox membership and you get the nice gym, like then you're just going to be like motivated to be fit all the time. And it's just not so, you still have to worry about like, what are you eating and all this stuff. So I don't know. I just think that like, because once I eventually made 10 grand a month. I remember I was like 22 or 23 when I first made like 10 grand in a month off of like a commission check. And I just was like, it was honestly pretty cool. It was like I felt like it was equivalent to like getting out of like financial prison or something, where I was just like, dude, I can go spend $500 and it's not a huge deal right now. Like that's crazy, and it is, I think that there's like the moment that you move into like a new tax bracket, or like when you first experience something, that change, whether it's like going from, 10K to 100K or whatever, like the difference is like that movement is a cool experience. But the idea that that's like a sustainable way that you're always going to be that elevated now that you've like achieved a certain state is a fallacy, because eventually it's just another day. You get used to the apartment, you get used to the car, you get used to like all of the things. And then, at a certain point, like you really have to look inward to like, achieve like happiness or, fulfillment or whatever your end goal is, Um, is that making sense?
100%. That's
Yeah.
so good. I'm glad that you touched on that because a lot of people think that money is the answer to their problems, to their purpose problems. But there are some purpose problems that can only be solved with true fulfillment and living a life of purpose and living a life of meaning and value and integrity. And no amount of money can make a person have those particular qualities. Um, they can affect those qualities, but being a person of character, I think is something that is rare and is not determined by a bank account number. You know, I've met
Yeah.
people with amazing character of all wealth levels and poverty levels and from the street to the penthouse, people
Mhm.
with outstanding character. So um I think that's the most important thing, to your point. So for anybody that is an entrepreneur that might be working to get to that point, how do you how do you get to that point from not being able to afford the sugar fish for the potential date that got curved
Yeah.
to having the thing where 10, 20, 30K a month is normal and now I'm focused on bigger things and more concerned about my purpose? What kind of steps did you take to create income and have cash flow and change your situation, which I'm sure added to the mental clarity that you're able to develop,
Yeah.
because finances do affect your mental health? So how did you work through that point and get to a point where you can create wealth and focus on really enjoying life?
Totally. That's a great question. And I just want to preface this by saying that like I can tell you till the cows come home that money's not the answer to like happiness and fulfillment in life. But people told me that many, many times when I was younger, and I had to find out for myself. So if you're listening to this and if you're like a young entrepreneur or you're like, on the come up and like you're hearing me talk about all this stuff and you just like, man, you just don't know how to, spend your money. That's the thought I always used to have. Like, man, you don't know where to shop, like just wait, give me 10 grand. I'll be happy, like that. I get it. If that's where your head's at, like I was there for a long time. And if you're like me, like nothing I say will really deter you from wanting to like achieve that for yourself and find out, which I think everyone should do, So I guess the only thing I could really do is kind of share my story as it pertains to like my financial, trajectory, and then explain like some commonalities that I've seen amongst other people that have had, similar success and give my best, advice. So I got that job that I was referring to. I'd been out in California for like a year. My first job was working at this place, Chili Beans, which was like in the mall in Santa Monica. And I would sell these like knockoff Brazilian sunglasses, and like it was just like it was just whatever, just to get me on my feet, and then I got this first job through like a friend of mine, got the interview, and it was tough, man. I worked really, really hard. It was a commission-based sales job. The sale was really tough. There was not like, a ton of leads in that role. It was kind of a lot of cold calling and just grindy, dude. And I just was working really hard, and I figured, man, if I could just like get to the point where I started to get some momentum, make a little bit of money, then I'll figure it out from there. And that's basically what happened. I ended up working there for 3 years. um and I ended up with like a six-figure salary. uh and I was comfortable, and I was making enough money to like kind of achieve that thing that I was talking about, that 10 grand a month, like all my problems will be solved. I was able to kind of like take a peek behind the curtain, and just like I felt really accomplished. Like that first like 10 grand month was like something that really did a lot for like my self-esteem and my ability to look at myself and say, this is possible, like putting your mind to something, achieving something. And it was just through like, I think getting a sales job is like the best thing you can do. If you're really a hustler and you don't care what it is that's going to get you there, like get a sales job, get on the phone, learn to communicate with people. If you're an extroverted person and you're high energy and like, or if you just like coffee and I mean, even if you don't like people, if you can just talk to them, I think it's a great way to like exponentially increase your income, because this is and this is like the fundamental principle that I think a lot of people, maybe not overlook, but they don't really deeply think about it. But you have to think about leveraging your time in a way that's going to make you more money than just exchanging your time for money. right? Like if you don't have like a commission structure where you can make like a substantial amount more money than you would just working like a regular base salary job, then like you're going to be confined to like what you can do within that like salary that you're getting. If you're making 70 grand a year, that's not a bad salary if you're just trying to like live a normal life. But like, especially if you live in a major city and you want to have like, a nice place and a nice car and eventually like a family and kids in a house, like it's not going to happen on 70 grand a year. So you need to think like, okay, how do I make more than that? And the way that you do that is you exchange value instead of just time. So you go up, you get a sales job. It's like the most basic form of exchange of value where you're like, okay, I'll sell these products, and the more products I sell, the more money that I'm going to make. And that is a way to leverage your time. If you think that you can be more efficient and work harder and just like, figure out a way to make 150 grand a year in commission versus just like your 70K, like doing a job, it's maybe more secure that way, but less upside. So putting yourself in a position where there is at least the opportunity for a high amount of upside is the first step. You can't make more money if there's just not the option. And with most like salary positions, like you're just never going to get above like a certain amount because you can just hire somebody else that's like fresh out of college for 60, 70 grand a year and teach them to do pretty much, most office jobs. So you have to do something like either very specific, very technical, like, really be like proficient in a skill set, like whether that's like, the obvious examples of those are going to be like doctors and lawyers and stuff like that. Like, devoting a lot of time to like deeply learn a specific skill and then exchanging, your time for like a large amount of money, or you find some way to like, move around the variables in either sales or like ultimately the goal for me was entrepreneurship and being able to like run my own company and eventually like leverage other people's time so I can make money. Right. So I worked this job, I worked the sales end of it. I made enough money to like become comfortable, but I was like, okay, this is cool, but I'm never going to make millions of dollars doing this. And that's what I want. I want to figure out what actions can I take to make significantly more money than just like 100 or 150 or 200 grand a year. What do I have to do to figure that out?
And when you're at that point, when you were thinking, what do I need to do to create a different situation for myself, to go from employee to employer, but at scale,
Yeah.
right? To just maximize the value and get my time back and stop trading time for money. What specifically did you do? Like, did you
Yeah.
get a notebook? Did you consult a mentor? Did you pay for coaching? How did you know how to write a business plan? Did you write a business plan? What happened specifically?
Yeah. It's a really good question. Really, really good question, because that's yeah. Like what
But
exactly
specifically, like, what did you do
specifically?
actually to change your life?
So here's the thing. I was a very intentional, or I wasn't, I had intentions to become an entrepreneur, but I hadn't actually put together any plans. I mean, I had done like, I tried to like start a clothing line at one point, and I had like formed an LLC, and I had opened up like a business bank account, and I had like attempted to, look at like, I didn't really go super far in the pursuit of actually starting the clothing line in terms of like finding suppliers or doing designs. But I had a couple of designs made, and I was just kind of like trying to put the pieces together. And looking back, it was like very minimal amount of effort. Because honestly, what was difficult is like I was spending so much of my energy at my day job that I would get off work and I would just be like so drained. And like that's like the difficult part about like picking yourself up out of the hole, is like you have to be able to like go above and beyond what you're doing to like sustain yourself with whatever resources you have left over after like, your monthly spend, to be able to like deploy those in a way that allows you to like make money. So I would get off work and I'd just be like so drained. And then like Saturday would roll around and it's like the only free day I have, and to like sit down and like keep working was like really difficult. So for like the number of years that I was working at this job, I really didn't pursue like any like substantial form. I would always like talk with people that own businesses, and I would always kind of like be aware, but I was very hesitant to like leave my job or pursue something more full-time just out of fear. And I think that like, it's like the golden handcuffs or whatever they call them, where like, they were paying me enough money to like be comfortable to not just like say, whatever, I'm gonna just take a huge risk. So what happened for me specifically was in December of 2019, I was laid off. That company went under. Turned out the executives were like cooking the books, and like the investors like found out, and they both got fired, and the company went bankrupt. But I got laid off, and I got a severance check, for a couple of months salary or whatever it was. And, I remember not knowing what I was going to do. It was the only job I'd ever had. It was my only source of like stability. And I didn't have like a ton of money saved up, but I had like enough to not like, immediately go broke. And I just remember thinking, okay, I'm going to take a couple of weeks off or a couple of months off. And then in like, February, March, 2020, I'm going to get a job, And so February, March, 2020 rolls around, COVID happens. Okay. And so I had interviewed at this like recruiting firm where I had been told about this from like a friend of mine who I had worked with previously at this other company. And he was like, yo, I'm making, 350 grand, 400 grand a year doing this recruiting stuff. You should come check it out. And I was like, okay, if I could start making that kind of money, that would significantly change my situation, allow me to like really be able to deploy some capital into some other stuff. And I was like, this seems like what I want to do. Again, like positioning myself in a place where I can make more money than I was previously. And so I interviewed there. I actually got an offer, and like simultaneously, a friend of mine was like, hey, you should come over and like, you should help me like work with this friend of mine who's like basically putting together a sales team for this laboratory to sell COVID tests. And this is back when like no one really knew what was going on with the COVID stuff, and people couldn't get testing anywhere. It was like this kind of fringe thing. This was like beginning of 2020. So I basically, I ended up like I was faced with the choice to either like get this like job that would be, it's 50K base salary plus this commission structure, or like go work for no base salary at all as a 1099 sales rep and try and make commission only, but with like much higher, more aggressive like commission structure. And I took option B. Like I went and I did this like 1099 gig. And it basically turned into like me and a friend of mine like selling these COVID tests, just like cold calling random businesses and trying to like offer them, like it was like a cash rate. There was no like insurance back then. It was just like this weird like hustle that we were trying to do. And eventually we started to get some traction, and then we started bringing on like sales reps. And that was like my first step in like trying to like, perpetuate like what I was doing into like something where I was getting, not just leveraging my time, but leveraging other people's time to get like a percentage. Cause like, 50% of like a sale is great, but 20% of, 10 or 20 people's sales is a lot better. You know what I mean? And that's how you're going to get like substantial income and like actually perpetuate your wealth. So I ended up, and I will say one thing I recommend is if you're in the position that I'm in, where like you're basically making your salary, you're saving up a little bit of money, but you don't have like, it's really risky to go spend 10, 20, 30, 40 grand on like trying to do a new project when like you don't have like a ton of life savings to put it all out on the line on like one project, especially if you've never done it before and you've learned no real life lessons from entrepreneurship. It's a really tough thing. So what I would recommend to people, if you're in that position, is do a lot of networking and find other people that are further along than you are, and basically work out a deal where you can come in and help with some type of entrepreneurial project and leverage your time for money, or not time for money, but your time for like sweat equity, essentially, is like kind of the term that people use, where you can get a percentage of the business based on whatever agreement that you work out with someone using their money. So you do a lot of the work, they put up a lot of the money, and like in doing so, you're allowed to like step into that entrepreneurial role without having to take on the financial burden of putting your own money out there. And that's basically what I did. I ended up working for this guy and eventually partnering with him to kind of put myself in that situation. But one thing that you have to do when you're in that position is have a very like direct, clear conversation about what your expectations are going into that. And I think that's where a lot of people fall short, not just like in putting together like a deal or like a partnership or starting a business with someone, but even like in the workplace, when it comes to getting promotions or like moving and advancing in your career, you have to make your intentions to your boss, your supervisor, or, whoever you're working with clear, so that like you can set expectations. Like, if I deliver on X, Y, and Z, if I'm able to like accomplish these goals, can I please get a raise? Or, what you have to kind of negotiate your way through. And I think that having that uncomfortable conversation, it doesn't even necessarily have to be uncomfortable, but basically being very clear and specific on what exactly your intentions are and what your goals are and what benchmarks specifically are going to trigger you moving forward in your career, or, receiving equity or compensation, is what that's something that I think a lot of people just do not do. And they end up just working their job. Hopefully the day is going to come when their boss sees all the hard work that they're doing. But if you don't communicate, they're just going to, most likely they're just going to keep paying you and not have, they're not going to like, it's very rare that a company is going to go out of their way to try and like pay you more and reward you in a significant way. You might get like a couple $1,000 Christmas bonus, but you're not going to get rich unless you have a conversation and make it clear like what your intentions are. So again, specifically with regards to my experience, I ended up like partnering with this guy that was starting a laboratory to do testing. And as a result of that, was able to, we started a sales department, hired a bunch of sales reps that eventually came on as like W-2 employees. And then as the business scaled, then we started to, with the advent of COVID and a bunch of influx of tests, built out a number of other departments, which was kind of like my first experience in actually scaling a business. And I had always like felt like I was ready for that experience, but you don't really know what you don't know. And there's nothing that will prepare you for the actual experience of, doing interviews and hiring people and having things not work out, and being directly responsible for the success of a department within like, a functioning business is like it's a pretty high stress thing. But it was the right time for me. I was 24, 25 years old, like, starting to like really like dive in and learn these lessons. And we did really well. We scaled the business. We hired a ton of people. I built out the sales department, the account management department, fulfillment department, and a plethora of other like, internal systems and operations, and tons of interviews, and had to fire some people, maybe got sued once or twice by some grumpy employees. But, you just go through the trials and tribulations of actually like building the business. And, as a result of doing that, I was able to like exponentially increase the amount of money that I was making past just like, 100 grand, 150 grand, 200 grand a year. And that from that point on, life has been different. It's just been a different experience. I no longer feel like I am exchanging my time for money. I feel like I'm building something, and I'm super intentional about what it is that I'm actually spending my time doing every day. And I feel like I am choosing to do things to perpetuate that success, as opposed to like doing my job and just like doing the bare minimum so I don't like lose my job. And that's flipping that switch to like, okay, I'm perpetuating this because I want to, and it's going to help me, versus like I'm doing enough because this is what someone else wants of me, is
Right.
completely transformative in like the amount of energy and motivation that I have to actually like accomplish something.
That's the biggest difference that I noticed between my work ethic and just my passion for staying focused on completing tasks, was the difference of doing it for another company versus doing it for my own company.
Yes,
It's like I'm always on. I'm on 24/7, and I can continue to seek information and create for my own company and organization, like
absolutely.
endlessly.
Absolutely. And I think that the core like motivator for me in that regard is knowing that I'm going to be able to like experience the rewards of that, because you can crush it. You work for like Walgreens, you could be the best Walgreens employee of all time. You could be in they could put your name on a jersey in the rafters of the Walmart or the Walgreens corporate office. You know what I mean? But you're not going to ever like experience any exponential, return on your investment from that time, other than maybe like a bonus and like some, being acknowledged to some degree. But like the profits, are not going to be negligible for you compared to like just doing your job normally. So
All right.
I digress.
Yeah. No, it's the biggest thing, and that fulfillment is there. Anybody that's seeking to find their ikigai, their reason for being, their meaning in life, their purpose, or somebody that maybe already is an entrepreneur and did that, what advice do you have for people to just get more focused? Because it seems like throughout your business, you pivoted into different verticals that were working. Maybe you trusted your intuition in certain cases,
Mhm.
and you were able to see opportunities, and that actually caused you to grow to the level and do the things necessary to duplicate and replicate people to make the business scale effectively and efficiently. So can you just give any tips to people who are trying to start something, or maybe you're in early stage and wanting to scale? What are some of the things that you did both tactically and from a mindset perspective, other than, of course, just making the acknowledgement that you had to hire new people? In doing so, how did you go about thinking about that scaling? And what was it like in the day to day? I know it didn't happen overnight. So
Mhm.
how was that process for you, and what was your mindset like?
Yeah. It's an interesting question. I think that with the lab, um, my mindset was I want to focus on really good business fundamentals, and I want to, really be as efficient as possible with what money we're spending, and, like extracting the most out of the people that I was working with, and not in like a, manipulative sense, but just like being able to, bring everyone to like the forefront. I think that your ability to like work with people and motivate and inspire others to like work alongside you is like definitely like one of the most impactful things. I think my mindset was just like, look, I want to make a ton of money. So I want to get as much business in the door as possible, and I want to manage it in as an efficient way as possible, so that we can get like the largest margin possible. Because like every dollar earned is like, a dollar earned, but every dollar saved is another dollar earned. And this is like very basic, like like theoretically everyone understands this, but really, thinking about like, do we actually need an extra person here, or can we just like, be more efficient in the way that like the system is set up, and like determining when do you overhaul a system. Like for an example, we had like we were using a lot of like Google Sheets early on to like kind of track customers. And at what point do you decide to like purchase Salesforce and like get a full blown CRM that, maybe costs tens of thousands of dollars to implement across your company, but like, is it going to save you the work of like an entire employee? Because if you can, you got to look at the cost of like one average employee being like, let's say $60K for the year. If you can buy a product that costs $30,000 that like allows you to like save the entire sales team, one entire person's amount of time for the year. Like, let's say you have, 20 sales reps. If you make them all even like 5% more effective, it easily pays for itself, and then some. So, you really have to start like doing the math and really taking the time to sit down and think, okay, what actually is the best use of my time here? Is it to like, get more business in the door and just like keep punching on the system that we have? Or like, do we take a step back and notice that we're scaling, we're growing, we're at that point revenue wise and employee wise where it makes sense to take a deeper dive into our systems and like really understand, what's the most effective use of my time. There's a book called The One Thing.
Gary
You might,
Keller.
yeah, Gary Keller. It's really great. And it was probably the most transformative, you know, piece of information that I ever learned, because it really comes down to like, you're only one person, and your objective in life as an entrepreneur is to like, leverage every single action that you take to make the most money possible. Really, when at the core of it, like that's what you're trying to do. So when you wake up in the morning and you go to work and you get to the office, like, or maybe the living room's your office, whatever. Personally, I hate working remotely. I love going into the office. But when I get there, like my thought process is like, okay, forget what's on the list of things for me to do. Like, what should I actually be focusing on? And I think taking the time to actually reflect on the objective and where you're currently at, where the business is currently at, and thinking, what is the most effective use of my time here? And how can I maximize the likelihood that we will be the most successful the quickest? And whether that's like focusing on like pushing sales, hiring for a role that's like currently like, causing a lot of your employees to like spend time, not focus on what they should be doing, like, introducing a technology product, whatever it is, like really thinking about what is the best use of your time. as opposed to just coming in, because you can come in and get caught in like kind of autopilot where you're just like, yeah, I'm gonna like, respond to these emails and I'm gonna like set up this thing. And it's like you can do that and like trick yourself into think that you're being productive and completely miss massive opportunities to actually like increase your profit margins, and scaling the business. So I think that like I really was clear on making sure that that was my objective. Every day that I got to the office, I would assess what exactly is the most effective thing that I can spend my time doing, and like for me, it also comes down to like balancing that with my personal life, because I can burn myself out and then become ineffective, again, tricking myself into thinking I'm being productive because I'm working, 16 hours a day. But it's not actually effective. And I think that, a true like focused, diligent 8-hour day is actually really difficult. I think that working for 8 hours straight and, taking a 30-minute or an hour lunch with a few breaks in between, like that is really difficult, mentally strenuous work for that amount of time. And then like if you're very motivated and like if the time comes where you have to like work extended days, which we definitely did early on in that project, like, working super late and like waking up the next day, just getting right back at it. Like there's definitely times where like you have to answer the call, but being aware of like how this stuff impacts you long term and like making sure that your mental, state is such that you can actually perform at a high level and crush those tasks that are actually most important. I think being aware of that also is really important, really key.
What are some things that you do to create more abundance in your life? What's your routine to prepare for that 12, 16-hour workday? What do you do to get your mind right? What are some practices that you have? How does diet, exercise, habit, and routine impact abundance for you on a day-to-day basis? When
Yeah,
you're
that's
not at
really,
work, like off the field,
yeah.
like what are you doing to stay abundant?
Totally. Well, I think that it starts for me, the most basic core function is like physical fitness and being in really good shape and like making sure to get a workout in where you're like lifting weights, doing cardio if you can. I also am a big proponent of like heat exposure, sauna, steam room, cold showers after, like doing that, like that little workout. That's kind of my like little routine, is like about 4 times a week. I'll go to the gym, I'll get a good workout in, I'll hit the steam room after, and then I'll take a cold shower. And that is like physically like keeps my body reset on a regular basis to where I feel like I'm, because it's like the cognitive function and like my ability to be confident, think clearly, is hand in hand with like how physically fit I am. And it goes down to like, even when I'm in meetings with people and I'm on a sales call, like I just feel more on point and confident having a conversation when I know I'm physically fit. I'm mentally focused. Like those things all kind of like play together. And then diet is an extension of that, which I think is like equal or arguably more important, making sure that like, I've most recently been on like a whole foods kick where I try and avoid anything flour, anything dairy, no sugars, like, just rice, complex carbs, meat, vegetables, those, having a diet based around stuff that I know is going to actually help nourish my body and help me think clearly. I also take supplements, vitamins, a little bit of creatine, really being intentional about that. I think that, putting again, this is kind of back to like the philosophy of what is the most important use of your time, and taking the time to really take a step back and analyze, okay, are you being, if your goal is to operate at a high level, what actions are you taking to ensure that? And like, what could you cut out of your life that's going to like substantially perpetuate that? Because for a long time, like, when I was working that one job I referred to earlier, I would be so drained from like a long day, on the phone. I would get off work and I would just be like, you know what, I'm going to eat a cheesesteak. And I'm going to go into work and be focused tomorrow. But I wasn't really thinking about the long-term impact of just like eating like a pint of ice cream at night. It was just like something that I felt impulse to do, and I would do that. And I think that that's to my detriment, because I just, you feel groggy and your brain is a little bit slower and you don't feel as confident. And I think, that stuff, it adds up over time, So in terms of like abundance, and how all this stuff plays in, I think that if I put myself in a position to be the best version of myself that I can be. That's like mentally, physically, emotionally. Prayer and meditation are another, couple of tools that I use on a spiritual level to like ground my mental state. Cause you can go to the gym and get yourself physically right. But if you're not tending to like your mental and emotional state, like, decreasing neuroticism, making sure that you're able to think clearly and like navigate through, problems and conversations in a way that allows you to come out, with clarity is, you can get really lost in the sauce. At least I can personally. Some people don't struggle with that. I remember a coworker once was explaining that she feels anxiety in her body, like it like builds up in her body and her body feels tense, her shoulders get tense. And like I don't relate to that as much as I relate to like anxiety building up in my head, where I start to have like excess thoughts and like my brain starts to move quicker and quicker and it starts to become like less efficient and more all over the place. So taking the time to meditate, slow down, really focusing on breath and making sure that I'm attending to my mental state in addition to like the physical balance. And then from there, like when I'm centered in that in those regards, spiritually, mentally, physically, then it's all about taking action. And I genuinely believe that if you have an abundance mindset and you're taking the right actions every day to put yourself in a position to succeed, whether that's like, making those sales calls or shooting those emails out or, just working towards like whatever goal it is, I think that you will be rewarded by way of just, seeing success. And this is one of those things kind of looping back to, my spiritual life being built on experiences, not just philosophy. I don't expect anyone to believe this, but it's been my experience that like when I take those actions, I'm able to manifest results on the other end of it. And a lot of times it doesn't make sense. Like it's kind of like the 80-20 rule where like, maybe a lot of the actions don't come through, but somehow, some way, like I always see a direct correlation to like what intentions and actions I'm focusing on and like the end result.
Do you have any type of process, or could you maybe consolidate some of the rules and ways that you've learned how to manifest things quickly? Like what really works well for you when it comes to having an idea and saying, I want to bring this into the physical existence as quickly as possible?
Yeah, I think that visualization of whatever it is that you truly desire is like a huge thing. This might sound a little crazy, but I put in like AirPods and I'll like walk around or I'll play music in my car and I'll drive and I'll think very intentionally about like what I desire and like what I want the outcome of my certain area of my life to look like, whether that's like, my dating life or my career or, just like my overall mindset of like where I'm living and like what my apartment looks like. And, just being very specific and thinking, okay, I'm going to do these specific actions and hopefully like the end result will be this, which will allow me to like experience this and being super specific about visualizing that so that I have like almost like a mental guide where like that's kind of what my thought life consists of. It's like when I'm going through my day and I'm thinking about what am I doing? It's not just like it's not random. I'm very specifically trying to manifest a version of reality that I think would be most enjoyable, so I try and very specifically think about what it is that I want and then backtrack that to my actions. But I do that by like actually thinking through this stuff a lot of times to music, but sometimes just like as I'm going throughout my day, like doing whatever I might be doing, um, really thinking about what I want my life to look like. And then thinking about, okay, what actions can I take to directly impact the likelihood of that being as high as possible?
That's great. And talk about discernment. When you do get ideas or impulses to take certain actions, how do you know which thing to do to go ahead and get that result? How do you know you're on the right track?
Mm. Hmm. Yeah. How do you know you're on the right track? I think it's like I think there's like a feedback loop that you'll generally get. And a lot of times it's an intuitive like gut feeling that I have where, I kind of know I know myself well enough to know like when something feels right and when something doesn't feel right. And I think that just I think I go off of principle more than I do like results. The results I think like come over time, but just being principled in like, okay, I might, like I might not get the results, like I might not close the deal, but if I go and I do my research before I have a call and I actually, successfully do a demo for a product and I ended up like, closing, bringing in a new partner for our business or something like that. Like I know, maybe the result doesn't happen, but having the sense that I've done everything in my power to make that a reality, that's kind of like the benchmark that I have because I can't control the outcome. I can't control the results. I can just impact the likelihood that they'll happen in my favor. And I do that by like making sure that when I review, when I like self-reflect on like what I've done, there's not part of me that thinks, oh, well, I could have done a little bit more research on the company, or, I could have worked out or done that extra rep or whatever. And I think that you got to be careful not to go too far into the realm of being a perfectionist. I think like chasing, like, there's a Vince Lombardi quote that I really like. It's perfection is unattainable, but if we chase perfection, we can catch excellence. So I just try and think about, I'm going to do my best with the tools that are in front of me to do the best I can in every situation. And I know if I do that, I will be satisfied and can accept the result that comes along with whatever happens.
Yeah, love that. And how long did it take you to get to a place of complete self-acceptance? Any advice for someone on that journey?
Complete self-acceptance. I don't know if I'm there. I think that I have moments where I feel like I'm there, but I also have, I have days where I wish that I was, I wish certain things were different in my life. Yeah, I think it comes back to like just the making sure that I have done everything in my power in order to feel like I left it all out on the field. I can accept the results of whatever my life looks like as long as I know that like there wasn't something more I could have done. Like I would rather, like, here's the thing, like when it comes to like, asking a girl out, I think this is like something I've personally dealt with where like I'll want to like say something to a girl. And back in the day, like I would just like never say something. Like if I'm out with my friends or whatever, and I didn't say something to a girl I liked or something, that would be way more painful than going up and like saying something and getting rejected. But at least I know like I shot my shot, or at least I tried to that's like one of the more direct examples I can give for like that philosophy of just, I think the worst thing that you can do is not know what your life could have looked like, or what potentially could have happened. And self-acceptance for me is not like a results thing, because I think I'll always be able to compare myself to like a different situation or think about what could be different, because I can like tear my entire life apart. I can get OCD and think, oh, I need to have like everything perfect and whatnot. But if I know that I'm satisfied with the actions that I've taken, then I can like rest assured that I'm where I'm supposed to be in life. And I think that's where I derive my like self-acceptance from.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's great. So, what would you say, Yosh, is the next thing for you on your journey? Not just your journey of as an entrepreneur and as a business leader, and your journey of entrepreneurship, but what about the journey of life and personal fulfillment and development? What lies on the road ahead for you personally?
Well, lies on the road ahead. That's a good question. Well, right now I'm working on a project. It's called Tova. It's digital tipping for hotels and different businesses. Basically, like it's a QR code based system that we're working on right now, and that's kind of like my main focus career wise. I'm trying to, it's kind of like a high risk, high reward technology play that could be really lucrative. I'm going to try and like raise some money this year, I think, and see if I can like really, roll with that and get like some substantial customers going. That would be like the dream for me. I've always kind of like wanted to do something related to technology and software, just because, back to that fundamental philosophy of like scaling your income exponentially. I think that when you have like a software product that you can replicate by just like multiplying the code, in many different applications. I think that you can really, the amount of money that you can make is really basically endless, which is why you see like a lot of these huge companies, most of the major companies are software companies today. And so I'm kind of pursuing that as like a lifelong, or like, just something that I've wanted to do since I was little. So that's like the main focus career wise. And then like on a personal level, dude, I just want to really get grounded and just feel like super excited about life every day and enjoy like the little moments. I use this philosophy a lot, where it's like, what's the value of your time? Because time is the one resource that you'll never get back, along with like health. I think they kind of go hand in hand, because time is really not valuable if you're not healthy. They say like, a healthy man wants 1,000 things and a sick man just wants one, which is to be healthy, right? So obviously health is super important, but with regards to time, like I asked people the question all the time, would you rather be like 50 years old? And a lot of my friends are like in their 20s and whatnot. And I was like, would you rather be 50 years old with $1 billion, or would you rather be yourself and broke? And people like think about it, and like almost without fail, everyone's like, I'd rather be 20 something, because you can't, like, no matter how much money you have, you can't buy any time. You cannot go back in time. And I think that for me, like the ability to recognize that I'm young, healthy, have a lot of like cool experiences in front of me is like worth more than like any amount of money. But like, it's easy to get lost in the sauce. Again, kind of going back to like what we were talking about in the beginning, like that 10 grand a month idea, really dissolving myself of that, while also like ironically like focusing on entrepreneurship, but really just like, I want to wake up and be so excited that I'm already rich. I already have $1 billion worth of value in the next like 25 years of my life. You know what I mean? I'm already like very wealthy in many regards, and being able to like really capture that every single day that I'm awake and just like that I'm healthy, I'm able to like go out and do stuff, hang out with my friends, because I know without a doubt, 27, and I'm building this company, and like I don't know, it may go on to be something really great. It might crash and burn. Who knows? Like we'll have to figure it out. Time will tell. But I know that I'll look back on these days, regardless of the outcome, and think, man, those were really good times. And I got to like meet a bunch of cool people, have a bunch of really cool experiences, travel a little bit, eat some cool food, whatever. Like those are the things that I want to focus on. I think that like my metric of success is like, how well can I, recognize those things on a daily basis, as opposed to, focusing on the outcome or whatever my current circumstances are, but just being able to like recognize like, dude, if you wouldn't choose, being 50 with $1 billion, you'd rather be yourself now, which I think most people in their, 20s and 30s, they wouldn't trade 10 years of their life, because you can never get that time back. Ask anybody in prison, or who's been to prison, like what they would do to get that time back. And so I think, yeah, dude, if I can recognize that on a daily basis in my everyday interactions with people, and just be super grateful on like a moment to moment basis, like I'll be good,
That's it. I love that. Really, it seems like you've really learned to appreciate, who you are here and now, and make the most of right now, and that's definitely a message that I resonate with and want to share with the world also, is to love yourself, love people, and find your purpose and live in it. And if you are living in it, congratulations. Turn up.
Totally.
Live in it more
Turn it up.
abundantly. Yeah. Turn it
Hell
up.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want
That's
to
cool.
bring us a little bit to a close here. We've talked about so much. I want to make sure our audience can digest all this abundance. But I want to know just, real quick, what did you say is your message, your legacy, or your why? Like, what is your big why? And also the message you want to leave for people who, if this is their last time hearing you, you want to make sure that they understand this, or these messages, or this list of things, or your why, whatever it is. But I always like to ask people about their why, what's important to them, and their reason for being, and just state that and make it known. And then what's your legacy, and what do you want to be remembered for? And what advice do you have, as kind of like any final words of advice for anybody that might go out into the world and take your advice? and use it in the world, what would that advice be?
Man, that's
But
a
yeah, let's start with the why.
yeah, it's a deep question. I think the why, I want to see what I can accomplish in my life in every respect, not necessarily just in like material sense. And I think that there's this it's kind of a corny quote that it's like these like online quotes that like you hear, and some of them are kind of corny, but one of them really resonated, where it's like, hell is not this place that you end up in that's like when you die, like you go and it's like this evil, like really fiery place. It's like hell is like dying and seeing a version of what you could have become in life. And as you're dying, like you get to see like what you could have done had you like really taken it all away. And I really think that that's like one of my core philosophies on like what I'm doing here is like, I want to help other people achieve that same state. And then like myself, like when that day comes when I die, like I can really think like maybe I am like the most fulfilled, self-actualized version of what I could have become. I think that that's kind of the point of life, to just like, and maybe, some people might have a completely different philosophy and that's fine. But for me, it's like, I want to do as much as I can to impact the world and like live like a super fulfilling life. I think that would be more than enough.
Yeah. Well, you're doing it. We appreciate everything that you do. And thank you. I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for sharing. I think we should definitely continue more conversations in the future
Absolutely.
and share more with the people. And where can people follow you, find you, if you want to share any information about your business, any companies, or anything that you want to share, social media
Yeah.
handles? Please let the people know where to follow you, where to subscribe, and where to support you.
Yeah, I actually I'm not huge on social media. I do have a LinkedIn, Alyosha. Mabu is my last name, and I can kind of provide that to you after if you want to link it. Our company Tova, Tova, or use tova.com if you're interested in checking out what I'm currently working on. But yeah, like I'm available. I think the best way to connect with me would probably be on LinkedIn if you're into that. I don't use it a ton, but it's kind of necessary piece these days for business. But yeah, that's it. I'm just super grateful for you having me on. This was a really cool experience, and hopefully, you and the viewers got something out of it. Really grateful to be here.
Definitely did. And was there anything else that you wanted to talk about before we go?
Honestly, no. I just, I hope that if you're listening to this and you're unsure whether or not, like, you want to, do. I would just say, like, live life to your highest excitement. That's the only thing I could say blanketed that I would, dare to give someone as far as a piece of unsolicited advice. But just do whatever like makes you truly happy, man. Like, try and find a way to spend your time in a way that like really makes you feel good going to bed at night, whatever that might be.
We love that.
Yeah.
Well, let's keep it abundant, folks. You heard it. Do what you love. Do what makes you happy. Live your purpose. This has been Bijan and Alyosha on Abundance Universe. Peace and blessings abundantly. We'll see you next time.
See you guys.